So to identify them, we want a test that finds what we call the true high emitters. Now, this means we don't want to fail clean cars. We call this error of commission. We don't want to commit an error and fail the clean cars. We also don't want to pass dirty cars. We call that error of omission. We omit cars from the program. So whatever test we select to identify, we want it to be very low on either one of these. We also want a test that's low cost. We don't want people to have to pay too much money or government to have to pay too much money to do the test. Finally, we want a test that's easy for the public to participate in and easy for government to implement. So these are the questions we have in front of us. I put some possible approaches up here that we look at. One is to do what I call a full CVS emission test, where you take into a laboratory and you actually test the total emissions of the vehicle. It has very low errors of omission and errors of commission. It has to be carried out at a central facility. It takes about 40 minutes. We have to involve all the vehicles in the fleet to find the bad ones, and it would cost about $1,500 a test. So this isn't a very good option. So we go down selecting loaded mode concentration tests, idle concentration tests, remote monitoring, and onboard diagnostics, or several other options. And I tried to list their errors of commission and omission, at least approximately. And you can see, like, if we get up to idle, we start to get fairly high errors. We're failing clean cars and passing dirty cars more. So that's one of the problems we don't like. In fact, for NOx, the idle concentration doesn't work well at all. The initial choice in the US in most locations was still to do an idle concentration. The reason for that is that we were trying mostly to address CO and VOC. Also, we added loaded mode generally in the 1990s. Now, I wanted to point out that onboard diagnostics didn't exist at the time we were trying to design the test. So we didn't have that option to consider, and remote monitoring wasn't available. Now, one thing that we have to keep in mind when we judge American programs is once you start with a test, you build a constituency that makes money from that test and wants to keep it going. So that also influences a little bit some of the American decisions as we move forward. In the US today, 35 of the 50 states have I&M programs. The typical identification process in the US is idle concentration for pre-1981 vehicles, loaded mode testing for 1981 to 1995 vehicles, and OBD checks for post-1995 vehicles. All programs in the United States are not the same, so they're not all like this, but I would say if you wanted to pick a typical program, this is what it would look like. Also, as far as vehicles involved, 15 states have an annual check. Actually, I've reversed the thing. I should say how often up there. You require vehicles checked. 17 states check vehicles every other year. 3 states have annual checks for pre-1985 vehicles and every other year for the rest. As far as the vehicles involved, 26 states require vehicles from 1967 or 1977 and older to get tested. 8 states require 24 or 25-year-old and newer vehicles to get tested. And 1 state requires 1984 and older vehicles to get tested. Finally, the exemptions, 24 states exempt cars that are either 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 years old. It varies among different states, but the idea is that newer cars operate well for the first few years of their life, and they are typically exempted from the program.